Look at that mug. Look at it.
All right, whenever you guys want to start.
Welcome to Prime Properties. I'm Michael Morris. Sitting alongside me today, Christopher Reed. Chris, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. I know we have to do the obligatory signature phrase, so get out of the way. You're Chris Reed.
Yes, with Keller Williams Classic Properties Realty.
I like to get out of the way. Now, we are going to do that twice a show, just to make you feel better and to make the real estate world feel better.
Well, the division of real estate would appreciate that, I'm sure.
What was your feedback? Did you get any feedback about the show? Were
I
people
did.
happy about it? Were they I got more emails and questions about real estate last week that I think people thought I was going to answer, and I was like, that's not for me to do.
I got a lot of text messages from folks who I've met along the way in my journey over the years, and going all the way back to my time in the new build business. So it was kind of fun. I got text messages. Hey, I was flipping through the channel. I heard you on the radio this morning. Great show, great job. Which is much appreciated for sure.
Did you get inundated with questions though, where people because I think what happens is because we're doing this, you're the answer guy when it comes to this. That's why I am phrasing the questions, you're knocking them out.
Yeah.
But I think people think I understand all the fine details. You're the one that has all the real estate experience.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how many people are curious about everything to do with real estate.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic program. I'm excited about the future and future shows because there's a lot of questions out there about real estate, and people sometimes don't know, where to go to listen, to get the answers, and so that's hopefully we'll be able to help them along the way.
In the past, I think we've all kind of done that word of mouth of this guy sold my house or a car or whatever. So that's how it's been done.
Yeah.
The reason we're doing this, and we should say, is to educate buyers and sellers, but just the general public, because at some point in your life, you're going to buy a property, lease a property, and you have to know what these advocates do for you.
Yeah, and I think it's important to help folks understand the roles because there's various roles that agents play. They can, you can get exclusive representation. You can get, there's dual agency. So agency relationships and how they relate to a buyer or a seller or both is an important thing for folks to understand.
It's not like my buddy Andrew, who always likes to say he's the guy that you go, I know a guy. If you're looking for tile or something, he can find you a box of it, but you need to go to an expert when you're doing this. Because it is the biggest transaction you're going to make in your life.
It really is. And going back to the agency thing, a lot of times buyers will think, oh, it's the best thing to do is for me to call the listing agent directly. I'll get the best deal.
Right.
And oftentimes when they call the listing agent directly, they cannot get exclusive representation because as a listing agent, if you're representing, oftentimes, if you're representing the buyer and the seller, depending on how everything's worded, you have to be a dual agent, which means you can't give the buyer exclusive representation. So it's important to understand those roles. And as a buyer's agent in Ohio, and you're not working for the seller, you can give the buyer exclusive representation. And I think most folks would probably appreciate being represented exclusively, so their interests can be safeguarded, right? In a dual agency relationship, it's different. So,
well, let's kick off what we want to talk about this week.
Yep.
We want to talk about the 4 reasons to jump on the on selling or buying a home or selling a home in the winter time.
Yeah.
Because we discussed this last week, and you and I have discussed this many times, is that you have this kind of slowdown just naturally because when the weather hits, people. I got basketball games to go to where it's cold or it took me an hour to get home and all that.
Right.
All these negatives of why the housing market seems to slow down, if you flip them around, are positives for you if you're in the buying mode.
Well, and also if you're in the selling mode, because as a seller in the wintertime, you've got less homes on the market, which gives your home more exposure and less competition. And we all know less competition can give you the edge sometimes.
Right.
So that's an important piece of it. And then the other thing is that, the buyers who are out there kicking tires, when it's soggy outside and at 5 o'clock when it's dark, they're probably a serious buyer. Whereas
they're not just milling
whereas
around.
in the wintertime, whereas in the summertime, they're driving down the road, there's an open house, let's go in and see what's going on. You don't really, it's harder to ascertain who's really serious and who's not. But if I'm out there and it's cold and it's soggy and it's wet and I'm looking at houses, I'm probably a serious buyer,
Do you get that feeling when somebody, they've come out on a horrible night? I'm sure you've been there when it's been a blizzard or ice on the road and all that, and they seem to be a little frazzled because they had this listing appointment with you or to see this house at 7 o'clock, and it might have taken them an hour and a half to get there.
Yeah. Sure.
Do they still? Do you still feel they're engaged at that point because they've made all that effort?
I think they're probably seriously focused on buying something. If
I would
they're
think you'd
making
be more dialed in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that you're going to have delays, and you're going to have people that'll come late and arrive late, because of whatever. But I think those are probably very serious buyers at that point, and I would take them very seriously if I was an agent for sure.
What's the worst case of somebody having to get through weather or whatever it might have been that you've had to deal with? Because I'm sure in 30 plus years of doing this, you've run into somebody who's got some whopper of a story but they didn't miss their appointment.
Man, I've got all kinds of stories, but yeah, I mean, yeah, and they'll normally, you're texting with them and they'll say, hey, I'm on the way, but I'm going to be late. So yeah, it's just, yeah.
You just
crazy stories. You just got to put up with it.
But on your end, you want them to be there, but you want them to be safe. But
absolutely, yeah.
I think about when I never bought a home during the winter. I always did it during the summer because, like you said, I don't have to be as serious about it because I got off work a little early. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to look at a couple properties, but I'm not really that engaged because I don't want to be indoors. There's no furniture here. I'm not going to sit here. I want to get back out and do my thing. Whereas during the wintertime, I would be this is just me, so irritated that I worked all day long and now I'm going to look at this property. We better know what we're doing. Right. I got to be dialed in on this decision because I'm not saying people make snap decisions on it, but I would think they are more engaged with you looking at that property and saying, I like everything but the bathroom, so that's why it's out. Or I like everything about it except the school system or whatever. I would think that they would have that kind of list and would go through it a little more in detail.
True, yeah. And I think, because, that's a great point. I mean, for sure, it's a great point.
I'm sure you see it every day.
Yeah.
What I found interesting in doing research this week was that you see a lot of people kind of, when it comes to the holidays, you had that Thanksgiving and Christmas rut and then New Year's, and it's people kind of dial it back. You can't really do that in the real estate market, right? Because there's still great deals to take advantage of.
There are, yeah, for sure.
So you've got to keep pressing the pace. You can't take time off.
No, you can't. And a lot of times, right now our inventory is actually ticking up a little bit. So there's actually more homes on the market, October of 18 versus October of 17, for example.
That you shared that,
Yeah, so those statistics are important for a seller to consider, and those kinds of things should be, reviewed with buyers or sellers to understand the anomalies in the market at the time. And of course, real estate is hyper local, so it's different in kind of each area of town. No two areas are necessarily the same, but getting back to why it's a great time, to list your house and sell your house during the winter months. A lot of large companies will normally transfer employees in at the beginning of the year. So in December, they're out there and they got to find a place so that they're moved in and settled in before the
That's
start of
actually
the
how
year.
I got my house in New Albany. There was a person that worked at Chase that was not even originally from Columbus. They came here to this market.
Okay.
And the company transferred them to New York. So they assumed the house and they were making the payments.
Yeah.
But because it sat there so long, because it was a school system issue.
Yes.
It just there was no incentive for the bank or for the company to say we got to get rid of this right away because they moved like 4 people out of that same neighborhood.
Gotcha.
So they've got $1 million plus in houses. It's like, if we get rid of one, what to do?
So it's a relocation kind of a thing.
Yeah, but it was such a great advantage for us to find that because of that situation.
Yes.
But that's going to lead to, unless you had something, I don't want to cut you off because I think you're going where I'm going.
Okay.
Days on the market.
Yeah.
People during the summertime, I always thought that was the weirdest thing. That house has been on the market for 50 days, and they have an issue with it. Like, that house has probably sat in that lot for 20 years. What's the difference in another 50 days? But in our case, we bought a house that had sat there for 81 days because it was a transfer situation or a relocation. So when they did that, we got a better deal because the company just was tired of paying the mortgage.
Right. Tired of the carry.
But why is it such a big deal to have so many days on the market? Why does that seem like that's an illness for that house?
Well, a lot of buyer agents will use the days on the market as kind of leverage. All the houses have been sitting there forever, I'm sure that, But depending on the motivation of the seller, and everything kind of goes back to motivation of the seller, right? So if the seller is super motivated, it might be priced, a little less aggressively and will sell quicker. But again, going back to the statistics from October of 17 to October of 18, we know that the days on the market is definitely increasing. I think right now the average is somewhere around 33 days. So whereas before, in a lot of cases with the multiple offers and highest and best, you'd see homes fly off the market within just a few days.
Right.
So, but the number of days is definitely up on average.
But that's still 30 days is still not that many days.
Oh my gosh!
The
It wasn't that long ago that the average days on the market was 98 days, 100 days, 102 days. So 30 days is still an amazing market. There's still the inventory on average is still very low, although it's up from a year ago. It's still very, very low compared to normal.
You did say that's based on region also, because the national average in May of 2018 was 55 days.
Yeah.
But that's nationally. So there's
Right.
a lot of indicators that go into it. Like in Dallas right now, their housing market is kind of dipped. It's slowed down.
I've noticed that, yeah. And they're saying that's the beginning of a trend, but that's, I think it kind of, just remains to be seen.
I think it's a little early to say that.
I agree,
but
totally.
That, again, they're not taking into that region what's going on in that area,
Right.
what plants are not.
There's so many factors.
When you look at California, the exodus of people there because of the tax breaks they get by going to Texas or companies like that,
Right.
it's in flux because real estate can shoot up because all these people want to get out of California and not
Right.
pay 54%
Crazy.
tax or whatever.
Well, and all the new regulations, California on solar and all that stuff
Right.
too.
So it's cheaper for me to leave. Let's hope you're not from California when you
Yeah.
go to Texas.
Right.
But there was this huge boom, and I think that's what when you're saying there's a slowdown in Texas or wherever it might be, you have to take into account what was it 6 to 12 months before.
Right.
That real estate was shooting up for like a 22-month period.
Right.
Now all of a sudden it's slowing down. Of course it is, because it's at an all-time high.
Right.
It's like
what goes up
economy.
has to come down, right?
Right. It's like the economy when they say
Yeah,
it's a
sure.
record loss. Well, if
Yeah.
if the stock market is at an all-time high
Right.
and it loses 2,500 points, that seems devastating. Except for the fact that it was at 7,000 6 years ago and it's at 24 now.
Yeah, you have to take into account the entire picture, not just little bits here and there.
But that's why I think what you're saying about the October numbers of being up, what was it, like 4.8% or something, inventory at 4.8%?
Yeah.
That's not that much, but it's a significant uptick from where it was during the summer,
Absolutely.
where
Yeah.
you were probably begging people to sell their house to you just so you had something to do.
We were, as a listing agent, we were hungry over the summer for listings. We still want listings. There's the number of listings is just, at one point, 8 or 9 years ago, it was not uncommon for me to have 70 or 80 listings, and that was crazy high listings, a lot to manage, and that number is just a fraction of that right now. So.
Well, let's talk about outside of inventory, the weather. The good news about winter is not going to last that long, so spring is not that far away.
Right.
So as we're talking now, I mean, today is actually a beautiful day, but it's about to get worse. But spring is less than 100 days away.
Right.
I only know that because I get this updated on when spring training starts. I know that it's less than 100 days.
Right.
So if you're looking now, you're really prepping for down the road. Right? You're going to
Correct.
be in that house by spring, maybe sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of talk about that?
Well, I mean, you're going to be in the. I guess I'm not really sure what the question.
Well, what
is
I'm saying
exactly.
is the advantage is those houses are staged now. People are actually living in them, right?
Right.
So they look the way they're going to look, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to stay in it during the winter, if you're looking to sell it, your appliances are working, your heating is working. There are advantages to that. Whereas if I go during the summertime, I don't know if the furnace is broken. How would I know? Right?
Good point.
The advantage is I know everything's working in this house. I know all these outlets work.
Yeah. That's a great angle. Mm-hmm.
Because I did look at a house one time where the air conditioning didn't work and they wouldn't let you see the house until 8 o'clock at night. And I thought,
interesting. Yeah.
this is because all the windows were open. I was like, I don't understand. Are these new windows? Nope. But you couldn't go during the middle of the day because it was like 98 degrees and you would roast.
Yeah. Sometimes the weather and what time of year it is will dictate what parts of the inspection can or can't be done. So in the wintertime, they have a hard time inspecting the air conditioning unit, those kinds of things. So that can play a part to some degree.
In your case, when you have somebody evaluate the property in its wintertime, what are they looking for? I mean, you're probably looking at foundation. You're probably looking at the backyard, drainage, that kind of thing.
The home inspection issues. It's a great area, and it's something we want to talk more about on future shows and bring in home inspectors to have them talk about their.
I got a guy, by the way. He reached out to me, so we got a guy.
You're like Andrew.
No. I'm not selling you odds and ends. I just have a home inspection guy.
Right. Yeah. So it's harder for those guys to get on the roof, right, in the wintertime if the roof is icy and wet, right, because they might slip and fall. So there's various times of the year Impact, how much the inspection, what the scope of the inspection might entail, for sure.
I want to take a break here in a minute because there are 2 more points we want to get into. But
sure.
Again, hit people with what we got to hit them with every time. You're Chris Reed.
Chris Reed, Keller Williams Classic Properties Realty.
And then when we come back, we're going to hit the last 2 points of the reasons to jump on winter home selling season. We'll be back right after this break. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
2 more to go.
All right.
So we're going to go into, you're not competing with as many buyers, like we need to delve into that.
Okay.
And then you'll get a realistic pricing. So if we don't get
the realistic pricing part, I'm not sure where you're trying to go with that exactly.
So, because there are fewer people out.
Okay.
Let's put it this way: if 10 of us are all going for the same house over and over, and then we peter out because fuck it, it's cold. I'm not doing that. I'm not changing schools. I'm not doing this. Now 3 of us are. The price on that same home is not being driven artificially.
I gotcha.
And it's not artificial,
That's
but
a good point.
It's how many people are looking at these properties, and how many do I say are looking at these properties, right? Because you can walk somebody, that house around the corner from me, you can walk 10 people through there and have one serious buyer. Because you find out they can't get approved for the loan and all that, but still some other agent might say, there's so many people at that property over and over again. If one person's looking at it a week versus 10, it's more realistic that the person selling they want to move it, right? They don't want to lose money,
right?
But if I'm not getting 200 and I get 175, but you're paying closing costs, I'm gonna get the hell out of there, right? Because I need to move now.
True.
So, and we don't have to go that exact route, but I just
okay, all right.
That's where I'm going with that idea.
Okay,
all right,
very cool.
Let's see, where were they? I broke it at 15. All right, so we need to go 27. Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Welcome back to Prime Properties. I'm Michael Morris, still here with, I actually love doing this now. Chris, give him the spiel.
Chris Reed, Keller Williams Classic Properties Realty.
Do you know when we're not together, I say that at the end, just because of the way you say it? Keller Williams Classic Property.
Yeah.
We are talking about the 4 reasons to jump on the winter home selling season. So we talked about buyers caring less about the days that the house is sat on the market.
True.
And also that spring's just a few months away. So if you're looking now, you're really looking down the road. But there are advantageous reasons to do that.
Right, for sure. And one of the other reasons that a lot of folks will choose to purchase a home before the new year is to receive a tax write-off. The tax write-off part of it is important. And if you're an investor, you may have to reinvest that money before the end of the year for tax purposes. So
for gains taxes.
Right on. So and we talked about the transferring in by the first of the year from big companies.
So let's say 5. There are 5 tips because that tax part is really important to keep in mind.
Well, and the other thing is too, a lot of employers will give people time off during the holidays, so they have a little bit more time on their hands to maybe look at homes, whereas they're busier during the first part of the year.
Right.
So.
Do you see that a lot? That people will say, I'm off this week so you can show them as many properties?
Absolutely. For sure.
Because they tend not to do that during the summer. They go on vacations with that time off.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
So it's got to be easier for you to locate people. What are you doing in that
My chair is sinking on me.
And Chris was on the show. Now he's left the show.
No.
I want to get into the next thing. You're not competing with as many buyers for your next house.
True.
When you're doing it during the winter.
Right.
Do you see, because we've talked about the slowdown in terms of the activity, but you've seen it on both sides, the buying and the selling. So which part do you see, who really has the advantage there? The buyer?
I think the buyer has an absolute advantage because oftentimes during the busier time of the year, if the seller's getting 9 or 10 showings during a week, it kind of gives them a false sense of the value of the house, right? So they may be priced more aggressively.
It's a little bit more like, hey, we got 6 people in here, maybe it's worth more.
So if there's fewer people going through, they may be less confident about their ability to sell quickly and maybe more open to an offer that might be more closer to the real value. Who knows? I'm just saying, it's an example.
But no, it's human behavior that if you have something and let's say you want to sell it is one thing. If you need to sell it because you already have a home that you've built or that you have to move in and
or you're in contract on a new build or
right. So
like
if you've got to go,
Yeah.
The longer that gap is, the more you start to panic.
The more nervous you get, and the more apt you are to accept something less than list price, for sure.
Do you find in your experience that people bluff on these things?
Oh, there's a lot of, yes, I do. I think there's a lot of bluffing, and depending on how good your agent is, right? I mean, the agent's job is to make sure they get as much money as they possibly can for the property by, but also being mindful of appraisal. But, oftentimes I've seen over the last year or so many people waiving the appraisal contingency altogether. Now, that's not something I normally will recommend to a first-time buyer or someone that's
But explain that, because I don't want you to kind of wave your hand over, because that's a really important
It's an important piece, and a lot of agents, I've heard horror stories of newer agents and bigger brokerages that don't necessarily may have the oversight that they should have. Let's put it that way. One case I heard about was where an agent waived the appraisal contingency just because they were in such a huge competition to get this house. The buyer really wanted it, right? And the agent was newer. And the story I heard was that they waived the appraisal contingency. The appraisal came in $30,000 light, which meant contractually that buyer had to bring an extra $30,000 to closing. Now, I'm not sure how that happened. Whoa. And I'm not sure the oversight, and I'm sure there were some legal issues going on there. But it's very, very important to understand all the legal parts of the contract, because if you waive that appraisal contingency and the appraisal comes in low, you got a problem on your hand.
And it's not something that goes away really easy. I mean,
Not
that's a
really.
major. It's a major gaffe.
That's a huge mistake. Yeah.
When you are representing either side of this, though, I mean, during the wintertime, it would seem to me that the times that they wouldn't want to do anything, Thanksgiving and Christmas, but between that, I would think you would have a lot of activity, and then it will stop, and then New Year's hits. But that seems to be when January, who wants to get out and move out of one house into the other, right?
Yeah.
So is that...
Yeah.
Typically, it'll be slower. People might buy, but they're not actually moving in. So how do they kind of manage that gap?
Well, some of them are moving in, but it's always been, from my perspective at least, it's always been that until the Super Bowl is over, right? So once the Super Bowl is over, it's a game changer, and it's crazy.
All hands on deck. Everybody
Right
wants
on.
to get moving.
Yeah, because again, Columbus Ohio is a football town, and until that Super Bowl is over, you're not going to see. But once the Super Bowl is over, things really get crazy quick.
But that's when pricing is going to go up too, right? Because inventory.
More homes are going to more homes are going to go on the market right after the Super Bowl is over. Once January and February is over, the number of listings goes way up quickly. So.
And forecasting for next year, because I know you do a lot of research too, you're seeing that the housing market's still supposed to stay strong through 2019. So it's not that even if you got that 4.8% more inventory for October, it may not be that way in February, March, or even summertime.
True.
There may be nothing on the market. Or there's always something on the market.
The number of buyers definitely is going to go up at that time. There's going to be more competition. So, there's so many different factors to go into it for sure.
Well, let's get into this last piece because we're almost out of time.
All right.
And I will define what I mean by this if you're confused by this question.
All right, sir.
But you'll get a realistic sense of the listing price. In the winter months versus
it's a great point.
Any other time.
It's a great point because you don't have all the traffic that the fluff traffic, I might call it, that the sellers might misconstrue
Let's
as.
call that show and go. Like they come, but they're not really there with their wallet. They're just showing
it's
up.
funny you say the show and go because that's actually a term in the industry. Show and go is a huge term. You just nailed it. Good job. So but you get a more realistic idea of the number of folks that might really be interested in your house, and so I think during the wintertime you are going to get a more realistic idea of the value.
It seems to me, because I see a lot of your signs up, especially in my neighborhood, and I'm not seeing, during the summertime, there were people, everybody I knew in Grove City, all had to go to a showing or get their house ready for a showing, and now I'm not seeing it. So I'm seeing maybe one car in a neighborhood going to a house.
Yeah.
But for you, it's got to be, you got to feel a little bit better because it's not... If you're representing the buyer, they're getting the deal they want, and they're not overpaying as much.
That's true.
And even the seller is getting fair market value, or probably better, because inventory is still a little scarce.
Right.
There's got to be something where everybody won in the transaction, including you as the real estate agent.
It's just the bottom line is this time of year, wintertime, is a great time for buyers and sellers both, and I think that's the tip of the of this show and of this week.
Yeah, people shouldn't give up on it just because of what it looks
not.
like outside.
And you might you probably even get a better deal, and as a seller, you'll have less competition. So there's wins for the buyer, there's wins for the seller. It's a great time to buy and sell real estate in Central Ohio for sure.
All right, well, that's going to do it this week, Chris. But get that plug out one more time just because I like it.
Hey, it's Chris Reed with Keller Williams Classic Properties Realty. Look, love, live happy.
Oh, he added to it. You've been listening to Prime Properties. We'll talk to you next week.